I can't do it. Okay. We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live. F it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
Yeah, it does, Bill. Hey, welcome in, kiddos. Another edition of the Daily Puck Drop, Thursday, January 16th. We always appreciate you checking in, whether it's in the live show, which, of course, we're on YouTube, X, on the mobile app streams as well. If you don't know, we've got the Puck Sports mobile app, by the way. You can download that, iOS and Android. And if you are watching or listening to this later on the old podcast versions, we appreciate that as well. When you're on that YouTube channel watching it later, please hit that subscribe button as well. And please rate and leave a comment on those podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. And, of course, always up at pucksports.com. A reminder, during the live show, we've got our YouTube, and it's also on X. The chat is open, so if you want to drop a line, ask a question, yell and scream at me, you can do so. People are already in there right now. Corey is in here. Corey, appreciate his support. And he was the first one in, so shout out to you, Corey. Appreciate it. Gary's in there. Thanks, Gary. How are you? Doug's there every single day. Happy Thursday to you, Doug. And, of course, go Cougs. And Jeff. Jeff is always either the first or second one in the room there as well. So, Jeff, good morning to you. Connor, good morning to you. Jay says, I wish it was Friday. I need the 3-day weekend. That's right. I just found out yesterday, by the way, that our middle school is not having school on Friday. Literally just found out yesterday. So no middle school basketball practice coming up on Friday. We are broadcasting, of course, from the Puck Sports Studios built by Limback Lumber, proud sponsors here of Puck Sports. Contractors that got deals for you, free deliveries, everything from whole house packages to homeowner DIY projects, largest stock moldings in the Northwest. They got old school service. Why? Well, they've been doing it since 1930. That's why. Give them a call, 206-782-3487. Visit them online at limbacklumber.com. If you don't know, follow all the social media platforms. It is necessary. Unfortunately for my job, I don't want it to be necessary at times, although I just don't engage. I read my little news clips on all the social media channels, and then I look for funny clips, and then I get off. I don't get into a back and forth. But if you want to follow along, we post all of our content up there, show announcements, everything. So if you don't know, X and Instagram and Blue Sky at Puck Sports. I'll be better for those on Blue Sky. I'll be better of posting stuff up daily, but it's just a lot. Just a lot. And I don't like to spend too much time on it. I'll be honest with you. TikTok, as long as it's still here, I'm told by my kids it's going away. Going away soon. I don't know. I don't really spend much time on TikTok as well. I just post. We post all of our clips up there, and we probably get the most interaction on TikTok. So if you're on TikTok, Puck_sports, and then Facebook, you can find us there as well for all you old people, right? Puck Sports. And a reminder is, we'll mention it all the time, you can join and become a Puck's Posse member for just $5 a month. That gets you all the free daily content we do, supports Puck Sports, and in addition gets you VIP access as well. So if you want to become a full member, don't miss a thing. You get full access to everything. Pucksports.com, top of the website, will take you there, and you can sign up there. You can also just go to patreon.com/pucksports to become a full Puck Sports member. All right. What do we got going on today? Ryan Matthews says, good morning, Puck. Yeah, good morning to you, Ryan. How's everybody doing here on a Thursday? Here's what we got coming up on the show. Sean says, hey, dope hat. Thanks, Sean. It is a nice, like that hat. It's pretty sweet, huh? A nice little Seattle hat. I don't know if is it a Mariners hat? Yeah, it's a Mariners hat. Sometimes I can't tell if it's just a Mariners hat or just a Seattle hat in general. Well, Mike Garafolo, NFL Network, joins us on Thursday. So Mike's coming up at about 10 minutes from right now. And Mike has got some news that he put out about an hour ago along with Ian Rappaport that they have requested the Seahawks a second interview with Saints offensive coordinator Klint Kubiak. is the son, of course, of Gary Kubiak, longtime quarterback, offensive coordinator in the league. Klint was also one-time offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings that they have requested another interview. And as Mike writes, all signs pointing towards that Klint Kubiak could be the guy for Seattle. So we'll get the very latest with Garafolo coming up in about 10 or 15 minutes. In classic Garafolo, he doesn't text me back right away, and then it always leaves me in the lurches. Are you going to be on time? But he usually always is. Okay, so fingers crossed. Michael-Shawn Dugar from The Athletic will get his thoughts on Klint Kubiak and just all things Seahawks there with Mike coming up around 10:50 or so. Go to The Athletic. Go read Mike's stories. Mike did two just great stories on the Seahawks. One was just the overall look of where the team is at right now, the organization, the offseason, what moves they need to make, salary cap implications. Again, don't come here for salary cap talk. I don't like it. We'll talk to Mike about it. We start getting into cap hits and dead money. I'm just going to be honest with you. I spent 5 years at Washington State. I got a communications degree. Okay, math, I just don't like it. But, well, that's why we have experts on. Okay, that's why we get Dugar on. That's why we get Garafolo on. That's why we talk to Rob State and SeahawksDraftBlog.com. I will leave it to the experts. I know my lane, all right? I am fully aware of what my lane is. He's got a story on just the offseason, but then a story about, just John Schneider. First year breakdown of Mike Macdonald, but then a look at John Schneider as a whole. And into one of the topics that we'll have today with Dugar is, just how warm should the seat be? How warm should it be? Because, you're talking about a guy and a GM who's been there for a very long time. They routinely, consistently have had the same problem. And, of course, we all know what that same problem is. And can they finally get themselves over the hump? So we'll talk about that with Garafolo again coming up in about 10 minutes from now. Dugar coming up at about 10:30. We'll get the very latest with the Seahawks. And we'll continue our Seahawks chatter, NFL chatter, probably a few weeks after the Super Bowl. And then depending on guys' schedules, Mike last year we kept doing the whole season. And we also did that same thing with Rob. I'm not sure we're going to do that same thing this year, but we'll wait and see. And then the best news is in a few weeks we transition to baseball. And there's so much fun things to talk about with the baseball team because that's fun. That's fun. I got stumbled upon a Twitter feed that was put out there by, and if you don't follow, Mariners Muse. I enjoy Mariners Muse. I've never met him. I don't know who he is. He's just shows up on my timeline. We follow each other. He says some funny things. He's I don't even know if it's a guy. It could be a woman. I don't know. They write some funny things, and they're clearly passionate about Mariners baseball. Anyways, Mariners Muse had posted a Reddit feed of people who have, I think it was the Mariners that put it out there, and if anyone knows this, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm wrong a lot. That I think it was the Mariners that posted about their flex plans on Reddit. Hey, if you want to cancel, you still have time to cancel, and you can do it here, and this is how you do it. You're not locked in or tied to all of it if you want to get out of it. Well, as Mariners Muse points out, and they're right, it was probably the most depressing thread that you will ever read. Now, it wasn't massive, and it wasn't like 1 million people commenting or 1,000 people commenting, but it was enough. People's just saying, hey, tell you guys really want to get serious about winning and improving the baseball team, I'm out. Like, I'm done. I'm done giving you my money. I'm done supporting you. I will watch the games maybe or listen to the games, but I'm not going to actually go to the stadium and support you and spend my money. And it was really depressing. As a lot of us love baseball and just want them. I mean, this is why I'm wearing the hat today. It was part of it. You get sad in a way of like where they're at right now as an organization. And they're in a real crossroads if they're not there yet of, I don't know if they're going to lose people, like how many people they're going to lose. I'm real curious about attendance this year. They were in the middle of the pack last year. I want to say they're around 14th or so. I should know this because I tweeted it out earlier. I think they were 14th in attendance last year. And around 31,000, which was a drop-off from a year prior. They dropped by, I want to say, 3,000 or 4,000 people. And I'm just curious, are they find themselves having another drop-off this year? You know, are people that fed up right now with the baseball team that they're not just going to go out and support? And I think the scary thing, too, is, and I don't know if there's, I'm just thinking about this right now, if there's a direct kind of correlation to when the Sonics were sold, Clay Bennett takes it over. Clay Bennett takes the station or takes the team off KJR, and he puts them on the Truth. I don't know if people remember that. He puts them on the Truth, which I think is 770. Very conservative radio station. There's no comment on a conservative station. I'm just saying it's not fitting the demographic. It's not fitting basketball, NBA, putting it on a conservative AM station. They did it to bury the team and to just make no one pay attention to the team anymore. And so we'd all would lose interest. You know, all the players, they didn't grant access to the players anymore and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to revisit all that, but that's kind of what they did. And I'm not saying that's what the Mariners are doing, but when you go through this whole issue with what's going on with Root Sports, like, do we have a solution? What's going on? I talk to those guys a lot. I mean, I think a lot of people over there are kind of still in the dark of what are we doing? Are the games going to be on? How are you going to find them? Is there an option to stream? It doesn't seem like there's an option to stream, which is weird because I just saw a thing yesterday with the Rangers, and the Rangers are going to stream their games. So I don't know how the Rangers get away with streaming the games, and I'm sure there's a great explanation for it, and someone's going to say, oh, it's because of this. But how the Rangers can stream locally, but the Mariners can't, doesn't add up to me. But I think for Stanton and the entire group, ownership group and front office, they would be wise to go look at that Reddit feed and then just go look. And I just posed a question on X earlier today. I just don't like calling it X. I'm just going to call it Twitter, okay? And then people can correct me, but it's stupid to call it X. You go to Twitter and just threw it out there. Do you think people are going to stay away? And now, again, most of people are saying, yeah, I'm going to stay away. I'm not going to go. Is that a vocal minority? Yeah, probably. I still think a lot of people are going to go. Am I going to sit here and say, I'm never going to go to a Mariners game this year? No, it's just, I'd love for her to say that. I'd love for me to project that, like, oh, I'm going to take some hard stance and they're not going to get my money. And there's a lot of people that are on our chat right now saying, that's it, I'm done. I'm not going to spend another dime. I get that. I totally understand. Hard for me to do that. It's especially hard for me to do that with a pretty baseball-obsessed 11-year-old. So that's hard. I do enjoy going, especially in the summer. I think you can live in two parts of the world when you're a fan of any team, but I think a fan of this team. I think you can live in the space of, man, I really dislike this ownership group and really dislike what they're doing, but I still want to go watch baseball. And I get how hypocritical that is, right? It is, because by not liking the ownership group, by going, you're supporting the ownership group. So I get it. It sounds stupid. I guess, can I say it this way? I try to limit when I go how much money I actually spend in there. Is that fair? Because when I go in there, I don't eat any food in there. I've been a long time since I've done that. I mean, we have figured out a plan. Occidental, those hot dog stands, they got a great deal, $5-6. It's a hot dog, chips, and a pop. And that's $6. The best deal of any of those stands that are out on Occidental. So I don't really eat in there anymore, ever at all. Do I get a cup? Do I get beers? Yeah, I get a few beers in there. Come on, who am I kidding? Of course I do. I go to the cheap one, behind home plate, that the $5 value ones. But it's I think the Mariners and their fans are in real crossroads right now, because what has happened here and transpired here in the last few years has been, I think you have been, I don't think lied to is too strong of a word. I really don't. I think you've been betrayed. If you want to say lied to, I think that's fair, but I think you've been betrayed as a fan. Because the last few years it's been this, hey, we are in a championship window and we are willing to spend right now. Give us some time. Be patient. I think Mariner fans have heard that a lot, right? You guys, we just got to be patient. Well, I think Mariner fans, since their existence, have been plenty patient. And right now you see a baseball team that is a month away from reporting, like a full squad workout reporting. Pitchers and catchers will report on February 12th. So, those guys are coming. You're 3 weeks away. And right now you look at this baseball team and you go, I don't get it. I don't see any improvement on the team because they haven't improved anything. It was something yesterday on yesterday's podcast with Ryan Divish. And again, the Ryan Divish show is every Wednesday, brought to you by Chalet Bowl. We discussed that. Divish and Jim and Jim Moore and others are pretty still confident they're going to do something before the season starts. Well, I hope they do something, but that's something I'm not sure what that is.
Whelming, I think that would be the word. I mean, I think that there were better opportunities for them not being able to capitalize on Castillo when maybe the market was going to tell you more or offer more. That hurts you. I think there'll be more moves. I think we'll see something in the next couple of weeks.
So now, right after that son of a gun, if he was sitting on the Blake Hunt story, I'm going to really be upset with him. He hasn't responded back to me because you want to know why? Because currently he is in the Valley Furniture store in Havre, Montana, because he's a furniture salesman now. So he hasn't got back to me yet. But right after that, probably 20 minutes later, the Blake Hunt story comes down. Okay, so they got a catcher and he's back with the organization. We'll see what that means, what they're going to do with Garver, if anything, because they still got the Mitch problem with Mitch Garver and Mitch Haniger. We expect one of those guys to go. Can they eat some of that money? But the offseason, as Ryan said, I mean, he used the word underwhelming. I mean, I'll be honest, that's being nice. That's being nice. Underwhelming, I just think frustrating. Frustrating is probably the word that I would use, for the Mariners in their offseason. And I think they're in a real conundrum right now, whether it's a young fan base or not, whether they're going to start turning away their long season ticket holders. I mean, when you read that Reddit account, and you see the amount of people, at least on Twitter, when I just threw that out there this morning, that are canceling their plans. I mean, listen, there's a lot of wealth in this city. There just is. That's why, I've always kind of hammered this home when I hear people talk about mid-market. It's just not a mid-market franchise. I think at times they want to act mid-market, but that's because they're choosing to do that. There's nothing mid-market about Seattle, Washington, the Seattle-Tacoma area, which includes Bellevue as well. There's nothing mid-market about it, okay? Nothing at all. And, I think people do have money to spend, with the Mariners, the Kraken, Seahawks, the Huskies in town, all that, eventually the NBA. There does come with the Sounders, Storm, but throw them all in there. Seawolves, I don't know. Do we have any more other teams I forgot? I think you do eventually lose, though, where people, you're competing for the dollar. And, the Mariners are a unique situation because they play in the summer, so they don't really have any much competition for them. But I think people will look ahead to, I got the fall coming up, and I got the Seahawks. The NBA comes back. I got the Sonics. I'm going to spend my money there. And I think what has always just become increasingly frustrating with this ownership group is just the idea to spend money to make money seems, for whatever reason, to be lost on them. And that's the thing that I never can understand, and would love if they ever were, whether it's John Stanton or somebody else from that ownership group, just to understand that. I'd like to ask that question. Like, what about the idea of spending money to make money? Problem is that if you bring that up to them and say, hey, Why don't you spend money? They would argue that they do spend money. They would argue that their payroll is fine. They would. They would look you in the eye as the consumer and say, "Oh no, we're good. Yeah, we're good." But I do think, as we have in the rundown, I think fans have had enough, and I just going to be real curious about opening day. Real curious in the beginning of the season. What does attendance look like? And then what has been norm for them is getting off to these slow starts. That plagued Scott Service. Just not getting off the fast starts. If they don't get off to another fast start again this season, do fans turn? And then by the time the weather turns, school's out and summer is here, are they out of it again? Or just people feel more apathetic about the team to where they say, I've had enough. I've just had enough. I have probably heard that more this offseason, and especially in the last week or two, just talking about the baseball season, forthcoming, more than ever, of just the sentiment from fans. I've just had enough. Just had enough of it. So we'll see. It's going to be, I think it's a real interesting time, I think, for them. Quickly, before we transition and talk to Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network, I want to point out a piece. And go to king5.com and go to the Prep Zone page, or follow Chris Egan 5 on Twitter. He did a piece on Elaine Smith. And you're like, I don't know who Elaine Smith is. I know Elaine. Elaine I know Elaine because of this social media community we have, like on Twitter. Like, you get to kind of know someone on Twitter, but you really don't know them. That's kind of Elaine. Elaine's been someone that's always interacted with me on Twitter, and she's a huge sports fan, so I've got to know her through Twitter. And I didn't know this about her, and Chris told me this, Egan told me about this a few weeks ago, or about a month ago, and also Elaine did, that there was a story on her coming down. I'm like, okay, I'm curious what this is about. It's fantastic. Elaine is a wonderful person that I've interacted with over the years, huge sports fan. And since 1983, she's been doing the scoreboard and the clock at Rogers High School. And she just stumbled upon it. It was just happenstance. She showed up there. They needed somebody to do it, and she did it. She's been doing it ever since. It's a great story about love of basketball, love of sports, love of community, and being a part of the high school community. Go check it out, king5.com, Chris Egan 5 there on Twitter. All right, let's talk a little NFL. Let's get the very latest with what the Seattle Seahawks are doing as we head to New Jersey. Joining us right now, Mike Garafolo from the NFL Network. It's brought to you by Hartley and Hartley Insurance, your trusted family-owned insurance experts in the Puget Sound area since 1978. Honesty, fairness, integrity. Jamie Hartley is your man. 253-565-8700. Grab a pint also at Zog's on Fox Island. Hang out with some friends. Catch a game. Watch the playoffs. Check out their schedule on Facebook and Instagram for their hours and event times. Mike Garafolo, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Puck?
You sound tired and annoyed. You're busy. It's that time of year, isn't it?
I wish... Yes, it's that time of year, Puck. It's that.
Okay.
We're all busy. We're all working hard. Is it too late to make a Christmas vacation reference? So do washing machines.
Yeah, I want you to do me a favor, because you sound like you're up against it. Okay, I want. No, not up against the time. Just up there's a lot going on. Do me a favor. Mm-hmm. Our good friend Jim Moore, who eventually will get on. He only does Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays because he's retired. He's like, I don't want to do much more than that. But I'm going to get him on with you because he'd love to see you, and you'd love to see him.
Pretty heavy lift for a guy who's in retirement, by the way. But
I know. I'm telling him, I said, you don't need to do that much. Do one day a week.
Right.
So he writes, Substack. So he started a Substack site.
Yeah.
I want you to go. I'm going to send it to you. I want you to go read it today.
All right.
It is an all-timer. It's about him ranting and raving about technology, the use of passcodes for everything, and he's over it. He's over all of it.
Passcodes for what?
He was applying to be a substitute teacher where he lives in Bend, Oregon, and they needed all this passcode. He needed to register with this passcode. He's like, nope, I don't want to do it. It's annoying, and I'm done. Have you seen the movie falling down with Michael Douglas?
One of the all-timers, yes.
Where he reaches his boiling point at the McDonald's?
That fits me every day.
This column is that for Jim Moore. He's just reached his point. He's done. And then he also is detailing he is in the halfway through his dry January. It's just you're gonna get a laugh. You're gonna get a good laugh out of it.
That's a self-imposed burden right there.
I know. I don't understand these people that do that to themselves. All right.
I mean, I feel that way. By the time you get to Christmas and New Year's, it's just like and I take like 2 days off, and then I'm right back at it. I mean, that's all.
No one likes a quitter, people. Okay, no one likes a quitter.
I don't want to go that far, but go ahead.
Clint, give me the latest. What are you tweeted this out? You and Rappaport about an hour ago. Klint Kubiak.
Ian and I. It's funny. I went. I snuck a workout in, and I missed the text from a shared source who we were both bugging regarding Kellen Moore. And I come back to my phone and I see Schefter had then tweeted the Cowboys requested an interview with Kellen Moore. I'm like, what the frig, man? Like, what the, And then I scroll back and I realized we had gotten the text. Ian fired on both of our behalves. And so we get the scoop, right? So I was like, cool. All right, awesome. And so I sent him a picture of me like working out. And he's like, yeah, I figured. And then I didn't realize till like 17 minutes after he had tweeted, I got the alert from our Around the NFL account that I had reported the second interview for Klint Kubiak because we had talked early in the morning, and he's like, I think Seattle's naming a coordinator today. So I said, let me check. So I sent a couple texts out. I go, yeah, I'm here, and it's Kubiak. So I guess he had then checked and said, and he said, yeah, I agree. I think it's Kubiak too. So I guess he had checked and said, no, we're not hiring it. Well, I mean, not necessarily hiring him, but the interview. So he tweets that out with me on it. And I go, boy, I'm crushing it today.
Crushing it today, and I haven't done a single thing. So it's your you and Rappaport. It's your expectation that Klint Kubiak will be named offensive coordinator.
I think he's in the driver's seat. I think that's what I put out there because we were told it's not. You're over your skis if you say it's done, basically. But a lot of times you get the sense the guy's in the lead. He's in there for an interview, second interview, first in person. And you go, okay, I can figure out where this is going. So, I mean, I would say I would handicap him as the strong favorite right now.
Okay, why Klint Kubiak? Why do you think that they came to that conclusion?
So they want to marry the run game with not only the pass game but the defense and what they do. So that's why Hank Fraley was in there. I had heard that there was going to be a strong offensive line presence or schematically things that work. And the last name Kubiak, never mind. The last name Kubiak. I'll text you that one offline. That's a part of what they do, right? The zone read, the zone run plays, and everything off of that. The ability to play action off of that, to boot off of that. A lot of teams are doing it. There's different branches off the tree. Sean McVay and his folks are doing a strong element of it. Shanahan, that's part of what he does and all that stuff. So it's all kind of intertwined and he got off to a great start this year, right? And they lost Eric McCoy, the center, and I know you're probably saying like of all the people he's going to mention, the center was a huge part of that. So you see the potential that is there if your personnel is right, and if you don't have the rash of injuries that the Saints wound up having on the offensive side of the ball this year.
Because Derek Carr, Carr missed 7 games, right?
I don't know.
Kamara missed some games.
He missed 2 with the hip or 3 with the hip.
Yeah.
Remember he got hurt against the Chiefs on that play, or the oblique or whatever it was. So yeah, they were banged up pretty much the whole season. After that week 2 game, where they put up ungodly points and yards the first 2 weeks, after that, it was like they were never the same.
Is there any type of history between Klint Kubiak and Mike Macdonald at all?
I don't believe so. I could be wrong. They could have overlapped. I mean, I don't get the sense that like they worked together at any point. I didn't see anything overlap in that regard. Gary was in Baltimore. Was Mike there? Let me check.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, because his dad, long-time quarterback, Right?
I've been scooping without working today, so you know.
I know this has been your best day as a reporter. Is you doing an arms and legs day?
It was it was upper body today. It was,
No, good for you. Well, I could tell when for those who are watching, if you're listening, you didn't see it right early on when you did the lean back to show off the pythons. I mean, you're flexing. You want people to see what you got going on.
Well, I'm in a weird spot. I'm in our bedroom. My wife hates the exposed brick.
I love it.
But people love it. And
I love it. I was going to comment on it before we got into football. I love exposed brick inside.
He wants to cover it all up.
Gary Kubiak was the Ravens offense coordinator in 2014.
Where was Mike? Because Mike went back and forth. He was there. There you go, coaching intern. So there you go. We did it. We found it. There's the overlap.
Okay, so him and Klint probably going out after practice, crushing beers and chasing women.
Let's make sure. What are you doing? Why? He just had a baby. Why are you doing that?
What? He didn't have a baby then. He had a baby now.
I know, but you don't like
10 years ago.
You don't like to think of your parents in that regard. And someday the kid's going to see this clip and.
Yeah, I'm sure the kid. I can't wait for McDonald's kid to search this up on his Meta glasses, 20 years from now.
Meta glasses.
Whatever. They come out with something new, like they do that Las Vegas trade show, the electronic show. They I saw this one guy with these glasses. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like it's just basically a computer in your glasses.
Yeah, it's and I sold the stock. So we bought it when the IPO came out. We didn't get it on the IPO. I don't know how you get it on those things. I have no idea how that stuff works. But we bought it. I bought 15 shares. 15 shares. I had 21, right? And a buddy of mine said, "Hey, I don't have a E-Trade account or anything. Can you just buy? I'll give you a check. Yeah, sure, I'll
buy more."
So I sold all mine at one point, and then it dipped afterward. I'm like, "Look at me, financial genius!" And then he's now riding the. I got only his shares left in my account. I'm like, dude, come on, what the heck?
Hey, do you think? I mean, they'll say, because everyone always says this. Hey, if indeed they finalize it, as you're saying that Klint Kubiak is in the driver's seat for the job, they'll say, "Oh, this was our guy all along." Is there any chance? Because with like Fraley, they couldn't have another interview until he's eliminated. They couldn't actually name him until the Lions are eliminated. So they would have to wait until, if they make it all the way to the Super Bowl, they would have to wait until after that. Correct?
To hire him, yes.
Could they have another interview?
I don't know.
The rules are so crazy. I mean, it is so confusing.
I know how they are for head coaches. I just don't know if they apply to coordinators, because Kubiak is interviewing in person today, which I don't think you can do in-person interviews with anybody under contract until after the divisional round for head coaching interviews. So I actually today was, and I'm just getting started my workday here today.
Yeah.
I don't know why, if the assistant coaches or coordinators are different in that regard, and that you could do in person with a guy under contract if he's out of the playoffs before the divisional round. I don't know. So I don't know.
Do you know? I assume that's taking place here in Seattle, the interview with Kubiak.
Yeah. Now, I back to your question about Fraley. There is a window at some point before the Super Bowl to interview again, so you could do another interview. Yeah. Which I assume the first one was virtual because he's busy. And so that second one may be in person. Yeah, I believe that there's a window there that they can do it then, but then not officially hire him until after the Super Bowl.
Is there a chance we're going to see Kubiak and Macdonald and Schneider again at the bar drinking, and some fan's going to take a picture of that and leak it out?
You lost me.
Do you know that? Maybe you don't know that story. That's how people last year, there was a guy sipping a beer who's a Seahawks fan. He's the one who, I guess, quote, broke the news last year that they hired Ryan Grubb, because there's a bar right across the freeway from the Seahawks facility. It's called Dino's. You ever been there?
Great spot.
You've probably been there. Well, okay. You've been to Dino's, right? Great spot, good beer, pull tabs. Any bar that's got pull tabs is great.
Right.
And so they were over there drinking beer. This guy snapped a photo, and that's how the news broke.
Yeah, everybody's a reporter.
Yeah, everybody's a reporter now. You don't need to go to journalism school. Just have a phone.
I don't even know what they would teach you in journalism school these days
with
regard to how you're supposed to do stuff on social media, and how it's changed the game completely. So, I would think that they would be on guard.
Oh, please. Hey, that's got to be breaking news. And if that's Kubiak getting the job, I want to put it on speaker.
So you're live on Puck and you're on speaker, so don't say anything. Don't say anything off color. But I was just telling the story about how I broke 2 stories today without barely lifting a finger.
That's not true.
Oh, you got my back.
Yeah, publicly, definitely.
Publicly,
Yeah,
definitely.
You helped immensely.
I did help
So
him.
you guys it's Rap Sheet on the speaker phone.
He said bye. Say bye.
Bye, Rap. Good to see you, buddy.
Irish goodbye.
I'll talk to you. That's okay.
What was the question?
I don't even know if there was a question. If he's interviewing today, I would assume. Okay, so he gets the job. He's, what is he, 37, 38 years old? So, again, you got another young offensive coordinator.
Not 28, though, like our guy from the Vikings, huh?
By the way, and I saw that Grant Ubinski?
Yeah.
Great hair, by the way.
Come on.
I'm not saying that because you don't have hair. I'm just saying he's got great hair. It was a great looking hair. How sought after is he? Is he like the next McVay O'Connell?
I always hate the next Sean McVay. Nobody's ever the next Lane Kiffin, right?
Well, no one wears visors anymore.
It all depends on how successful you are, I guess. Is he the next McVay? He's going to be on the fast track. It was a virtual interview. Immediately you hear the rumblings, and you go to Minnesota and you go, is he ready? And dude, if he needed to be an offensive coordinator, he would do it. He would crush it. He's great, blah, 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 all this stuff. Okay, no problem. Because they'd heard things about him before, but I never thought this fast, just gushing about him out of Minnesota. So it's somebody's going to, and I said this about McVay, somebody's going to take the chance. It's going to be earlier than other places are ready to take it, but you could hit and it could really pay off, because if you wait, somebody else is going to wind up taking that chance. So that dude's going to be, 30 or a coordinator. What happens first? We'll see.
Okay, so Klint Kubiak, if he indeed gets the job, he inherits a team. He inherits for the most part, offensively, and we'll get to the line, a talented skill position guys. I mean, decent quarterback and wide receivers and running backs and all that. But here's the question is, does he have the quarterback? Is Geno Smith the quarterback for that team?
I think he's going to be your best option in the short term. You got to make that decision before the draft too. So there's just too much uncertainty when it comes to the draft. And, we're hearing this class is not that great. I think Mike Tomlin, though, put it best. Lamar Jackson was drafted at the end of the first round. He referenced somebody else who was taken in the second round, I believe. So you're going to have to make a call on Geno in the short term. And, I kind of likened it to the Sam Darnold thing. Nobody's going to go really – they're not going to be falling all over each other for Sam Darnold. So the Vikings may be able to sit there and say, we're not going to tag him. Let's take a shot at bringing him back at a reasonable number, have him compete with McCarthy, and maybe McCarthy sits for another year or whatever. So I think if you're looking at this and you're the Seahawks, you got a shot to sign him. You got a shot to do it quickly. You got a shot to do it at a reasonable number. I know he wanted more last year. I think you got to bring him back. But you've got to have, you got to bring him back, and you can't just sit there and be like, well, Geno's our guy, and not draft anybody and not really try to get something for down the line. And Sam Howell, we saw him briefly. That's not it right there. Why do you think, though? I mean, you know this front office well. Why do you think they haven't drafted a quarterback? And I think out here in Seattle, Mike, everyone wonders that just because of where he previously came from and the history with the Packers, where that just was their philosophy every year, was to take a guy. But most of the guys who have hit in recent years have been higher draft picks than they were drafting, right? And the one year they had the high pick was when they had traded it to the Jets. What number was that year? 6 or 4? I'm trying to remember. But even the years they took, like Mark, I know all these guys hit, but like Mark Burnell, but even Matt Hasselbeck. I mean, they drafted Hasselbeck late, and then they ended up trading him to Seattle. It's just, I don't know. That's so rare. Like the Eagles, that's who Tomlin referenced Jalen Hurts. The Eagles tried to do that with Jalen Hurts. The plan for Jalen Hurts was to draft him in the second round, have him play a little bit, show out, and then flip him for a first-round pick. Now, good for them that they had that plan in place because he wound up being their franchise quarterback. But it's just so rare that now that you're able to kind of do that, where you go, oh, we're going to develop a guy and we're going to flip him for whatever, the markup on Hasselbeck was unbelievable. That's the all-timer right there.
Hey, this is a hypothetical, but I'm just going to ask it anyways, just because it's been brought up on 2 other shows I've done, because I don't even know how we got down this rabbit hole. I don't know. Are you familiar with Danny Kelly from The Ringer? He does like an NFL fantasy football show.
Yes, I've seen
Danny and I have known each other for years. He lives out here, and so we got talking about this. For some reason, we got down the rabbit hole of coaches and trades.
Yep.
And we revisited the John Gruden trade, which is unbelievable. The haul that they got for John Gruden. What does Sean McVay get, you think? Let's say they traded. Let's say they said, we're going to trade Sean McVay. We were like 3 first-round picks at least.
No. 3?
Gruden was 2.
That's it. That's the cutoff. Gruden was, even that today. Whew, 2? What was Sean Payton? What did he round up being?
I'll do it. Hold on. It was
a 3rd-round pick, or it was
NFL
not much
coaches,
compared to that. It was not much. But they didn't want Payton. Payton was gone. It's so funny how that was painted as a retirement. It was like, is this guy getting fired? Is this guy just like, have both sides decided just to move on here, and he just wants to take a year off in the meantime? I
realized when we were doing this too, I didn't realize that Mike Holmgren was a trade.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Packers for a 2nd-round pick. Hold on. Where's Sean Payton? Gosh darn it. Where is it at? Hold on. I'll figure it out. But John Gruden, when I'm looking for Sean Payton, what was John Gruden? It was Bruce Arians was a trade. That's unbelievable. 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, plus $8 million.
That's insane. That is insane.
McVay would get more than that, right?
No.
Really?
That's bananas. First of all, why are we trading McVay? That's the guy you picked?
It's just a hypothetical stupid thing. That was it. The Saints got a 1st-round pick in 23, 2nd-round pick in 24.
Wow, they got a 1st. Yeah. Was it a swap? Or just a straight-up 1st-round pick?
New Orleans sent off a 2024's 3rd-round pick to Denver, too.
So they flopped the 2nd and the 3rd, basically?
Yeah, so the Saints got a 23 first-round pick, the 29th overall, and a 2nd-round pick in 2024.
That is incredible.
Yeah, I don't know, it's just fun.
I completely forgot. Not that I forgot about it. I completely forgot the compensation.
Yeah. Okay. Bears.
Yes.
How many more are they going to interview everyone in the NFL? Because every time I open up Twitter, they've sent out another one of those like college football NIL, like with that being said posts that we finished another person. They've interviewed everybody. When are they going to land on someone? Just hire Pete Carroll and close the book.
Well, this is part of the process for slowing this thing down that the NFL wanted to do, which the Patriots blew right through it by just doing the 2 quick interviews of guys that never had a shot at the job. So this is kind of what the NFL wanted, to make this a more thorough process, to get more people in front of ownership.
Yeah.
And mission accomplished in Chicago and with the Jets as well. Now you've got the Jaguars too, that are kind of, we still don't know which way they're going to go, but they don't seem to be just filling the time with the volume of candidates here. So McCarthy's an interesting one, because I think that's a good mix of what they're looking for. They're looking for a good offensive guy who can help the quarterback, but they're also looking for the leader of men.
Oh, I love leader of men.
You must say in that leader of men.
Yeah, leader of men.
Up there on the stage with a huge American flag behind them, Patton style. You ever put your face in a pile of goo that used to be your hand in a pile of goo used to be your best friend's face? That's a great line. So McCarthy, I think, is a good mix of those two. Now, he's not leader of men, but he's a good culture setter.
Yeah.
He's always keeping it fresh. I talked to Jordan Lewis, the cornerback there, before the end of the season, and he said the locker room wants him back because he's a lunch pail inner city guy, kind of like a lot of us. He grew up.
I love
inner
lunch
city.
bail.
He understands that mentality. So, he's got a little bit of that. He's got a little bit of both. I would hire him in a heartbeat if I was the Bears.
Two more things. Deion. What game is Deion Sanders playing right now? Does he really have an interest in the Cowboys job? Does he have an interest in the Raiders job? Is he trying to leverage Colorado? What do you think he's up to?
I think you're going to see a contract extension to stay at Colorado in the near future. That's what I think. I don't think he'll be the coach in the NFL. But if he did one day, I'm done doubting Deion. In the right situation, it would have to be like they had at Colorado with Zimmer there, Pat Shurmur there. Antonio Pierce tried to do the same thing with the Raiders, and if he had time, maybe he would have. But to add experienced coaches to your coaching staff to help you out, it would have to be that kind of thing. But maybe someday down the line.
Yeah, you think Pete Carroll could work in Dallas with Jones?
Yeah, I think so. Jerry's into the motivational stuff too.
Yeah,
just not as out front with it. He listens to motivational tapes on his way to work. And,
who doesn't?
That kind of stuff. Jerry Jones does.
Who doesn't do that? Hey, do you watch?
Doesn't do that?
Yeah, who doesn't do that? I mean, everybody does
Descendants.
that.
The Descendants soundtracks?
Yes.
A lot of that. We were Taylor for a while. Now we're Descendants, and now we're transitioning into what have we been doing lately? We're on the way out of this. Maybe we haven't figured out where we're going from this point. So,
well, once you get through the Taylor Swift stage, then
we're through it. It's done.
Good.
I asked about. I was like, "What happened to Taylor?"
God Almighty. Speaking of Jerry Jones, do you watch Landman? By the way.
No.
So good. He's so good.
Awesome.
His one scene is so good. So good.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the clip online, and I also saw the one where Billy Bob Thornton is talking about the wind turbines.
Yeah, that's a good
and
one.
how they're actually carbon negative.
Yes, yeah. It's a real good commentary. Now
think about that with all the electric cars out there. Okay, that's great. No emissions. What's powering the cars?
Exactly right. Well, it's the dirty little truth. I'm gonna go back. I don't know how to go from wind turbines to this next topic because there's not perfect marriage to it. But it's back to the coaching search. Yeah. And I thought about this last week.
The winds of change are blowing in the coaching.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. I thought about this last week when you brought it up, and I don't think we discussed it, but maybe we did. When you brought up the Thomas Brown is interviewed for the Seahawks OC job, and I thought, okay, so they've got to fulfill the Rooney Rule. That just was my first thought. They got to fulfill the Rooney Rule in order to interview a minority candidate. And then I thought a lot about then what's transpired here, even since then. I saw that Leslie Frazier got an interview or scheduled an interview with the Cowboys, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. And Leslie Frazier, and then I remember that Leslie Frazier interviewed for the Seahawks job before they hired Pete Carroll. And I'll always remember, and I got my timeline screwed up, but I remember that they had already made their decision on Pete Carroll was going to be the coach. Because Jim Mora, the day he was giving his end-of-the-year press conference, the Seahawks brass was in L.A. talking to Carroll and, essentially offering him the job. And then it comes out after that they brought in Leslie Frazier for an interview. And I'm thinking, how can we improve the Rooney Rule? The idea behind it is great. But the execution of it, it's a farce in a lot of cases. I don't know how you improve it.
What are you going to do?
I don't know.
This is the best option to be let's slow it down. Let's not allow you to interview guys before the division or hire guys interview in person before the divisional round unless they're not under contract, which they may have to do away with that now because the Patriots blew through that by just having guys who aren't under contract. So they may have to say no in-person interviews at all. Who knows? That's the only way you can change it to slow it down even more now. The Rooney Rule allows more people to get in front of coaches and even search firms. Search firm maybe help them with this. Next year they help them with that. Hey, this guy really impressed. You should bring him in, blah, blah, blah. The Rooney Rule was named after the Steelers ownership, who was impressed by Mike Tomlin so much that they wound up hiring him in the process, and that's the way it's supposed to work.
But we acknowledge that teams are being disingenuous in how they use it.
The all-timer, well, first of all, Gruden was one, right? When they hired Gruden in Las Vegas, and I I think, or maybe it was even, I think they hired Gruden, and we had reported simultaneously that they were going to hire Mayock to be the general manager. And then they bring in Mark Ross and somebody else. And I'm like, I even talked to Mark Ross about it. I'm like, bro, you knew who was the GM was going to be. And he's like, yeah, but the opportunity to get an interview and get in front of people. The all-timer. Eagles fire Andy Reid on Sunday or Monday, whatever it was. The Chiefs were in Northeast Philly at the private airport there. They flew there. They had meetings at that airport. Okay. News cameras were staked out there. The Chiefs are here. They're meeting, blah, 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 with Andy Reid. Blah, blah, blah. Like full court press. Not even, the ink's not even dry on the termination paper in Philly. Okay. Later that week, they interview God knows who, right? And Scott Pioli is sitting in on the interviews when he knew he was out as general. It was the biggest, like, what are we doing here? And I can't believe anybody even agreed to these interviews. Like, we knew it was over. And they hire him, and I think that there was even some talk to John Wooten at the time, who was the head of the Fritz Pollard Alliance, and he said, I think he said, well, they really, in the spirit of the rule, they complied. I got to go back and find the quotes. But I was like, this one, if I'm anybody, nope. And what if everybody said no? What if everybody said, what would have happened? What would have happened? And everybody knew they were hiring Andy Reid. So that was the all-timer to me.
All right, last thing before you go. What do we got? Championship weekend. Who comes out on top? Who are the teams we're talking about next week?
I like Baltimore to beat Buffalo. Hopefully it's a good game. I can't. I'm trying to get there. I can't get there with the Texans. So Kansas City wins that game. What's the night game? Commanders, Detroit. I think Washington will keep that thing close. In the end, I think Detroit's got too much. I think we got Kansas City, Detroit. I give the Rams a puncher's chance. I do. I think the Rams have got that. They're playing well up front defensively. They got a strong running game. Kyron Williams is moving piles better than I think anybody ever thought he could. I'll give the Rams a chance in that one. I don't make picks, but if you make me, sure, I'll take the Rams. Because I want the credit if we come back on this.
We didn't even get into the Eagles fan. Eagles fan. There's so much to unpack with that story.
I'm not going to repeat it, but the sentence that he said.
Oh, my God.
As constructed, I said this to somebody the other day. I go, they got scoregami, right? The scores never happened in the NFL. I said, has that sentence with those words in order ever been in the human history? I think that was sentence-agami right there.
Oh.
I don't even know what
I'm not excusing. There's just more stuff coming out with the Packers fan.
Oh,
like, what was his true intentions of what he was trying to do there?
Yeah, right. And did he provoke,
Yeah. There's a lot to that story. I mean, it's ugly on both sides, I think.
Yeah, and look, I'm from Philly. I grew up an Eagles fan. I'm not an Eagles fan anymore. People that don't believe it, I don't care what you think. I'm not. I get that all the time. But you know what's funny? I'm down there covering a game, and my buddy's got a friend who has a box for every game. So I go over to it's right by the press box. I walk over there for 5 minutes every game to go say. And I walk in, one guy says something about, you're Giants. I go, my Giants? You covered them or something. You're a Giants fan. I go, so I get my chops busted up north because you're from Philly. You're an Eagles fan. And then I come down here because I covered the Giants now. Now I'm I get it on both ends. You're all wrong. How about that? Anyway, that fan base, there's a lot of idiots that ruin it for everybody else. Because they feel like they have to keep a reputation up. This is our house. We got it. Just watch the game. It ain't that important, It's just there's no reason to treat people like that.
All right, when the news becomes official with Klint Kubiak, I mean, just give me a heads up. All right.
I'll tell you first. You can break it.
Okay.
Actually, Ian will tell you. You can.
Yeah, perfect.
We got it. We got it.
I just want to know. You'll be on your third workout of the day. All right. We'll talk to you next week.
Definitely not triple. See you, homeboy.
Hey, bud. There he is. Mike Garafolo, NFL Network. He's with us every single week. Brought to you by Hartley and Hartley Insurance, your trusted family-owned insurance experts. Also, Zogs on Fox Island. Full episode of Mike up on YouTube. When you go there, please hit the like button and subscribe. And also check it out later on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. And, of course, always up at pucksports.com. And if you're just joining us early in the conversation, Mike said that Klint Kubiak is in the driver's seat for the job, and that Klint Kubiak is currently in Seattle having a second interview with the Seahawks and an in-person interview. Let's get a Seahawks take on this one, and I've been making them wait in the green room. My apologies to the great, the talented Michael-Shawn Dugar from The Athletic, co-host of Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast. Of course, read all of his work up there at The Athletic. He's got two he's got fantastic stories all the time, but the last two were just sensational. One, just the offseason breakdown, and then the other one just about, hey, John Schneider. And it's not the title of the piece, but the piece should be titled, The Seat is Warming Up there on John Schneider. Michael-Shawn, how are you?
I'm doing good. I don't mind the wait, actually. I was trying to book a flight to Cancun here.
What are you, an NBA team?
Yeah, no, it's funny. Yeah, all the players go to Cabo and Cancun when they get eliminated. And then, I'm doing the same thing. Probably going to be there.
Hey,
Super Bowl
when are you
weekend,
going?
So. Super Bowl weekend. I'm looking at going to Cancun for my brother's birthday. So
okay, so I'm going to give you some travel advice. Okay.
All right.
I don't know where you're going to stay in Cancun, but it doesn't matter. You're gonna go to Cancun, and I'll text this to you. You're gonna go take a day trip to a small little island off Cancun, and it's called Isla Mujeres. Okay, it's about 25-minute, 30-minute max ferry ride, and it takes off right from like downtown Cancun. It's where we go almost every year for family vacation, like 10 years. It's unbelievable. It's the smallest little island. It's like 3 miles long. It's like 1.5 miles wide. Everyone's driving golf carts around. It's awesome. You'll enjoy it.
All right.
So
all right. Yeah, definitely text that to me. Yeah. I'm trying to set that up now. I think we're staying at Puerto something, beachfront, Airbnb.
All inclusive.
No, they were just it's a guys trip. We're gonna do Airbnb, kind of buy with something hotel zone or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. If it's by there, you're real close to the ferry. Jump over there for a day. You'll go to Playa Norte, which is the North Beach. There, you'll have a blast. You'll just have
all right. There we go. I'll pitch that to the group once I get that. Get those details.
All right, Garafolo is saying it appears that Klint Kubiak is in the driver's seat for the job. Him and Rap sheet with that. I don't know if you have anything to add to that. Have you done like a deep dive on Kubiak? And if Kubiak is the guy, what would your reaction be to that?
I'm gonna do the deep dive after we do this. So that's my plan, because I think once you get the second interview, it becomes pretty apparent that I should start doing some research. When all the first interviews, I was like, man, I'm just gonna sleep in, hang out with the kid. I'm not. I work a lot in the regular season. I'm not gonna kill myself over like researching this, baby-faced assassin that they were interviewing. The Minnesota guy, I forget his name, but he's like the assistant quarterback coach who looks younger than me because he is.
The guy's got great hair. Great hair.
Yeah. He's 28 or something like that, crazy. But yeah, I wasn't chasing all those down. But the Kubiak thing is interesting. I really watched their offense a lot, the Saints offense, the early version of it. Because as you remember, they were just dropping a 40 ball.
That's right.
It seemed like every other week, running like that kind of wide zone under center scheme. It was really working. They were really explosive. That Shaheed, I forget his name, receiver was like Deshaun Jackson reincarnated every week, was like a 50, 60-yard bomb. Really good stuff. And then they just fell off a cliff. So I'm interested to kind of study that. Maybe it was just because their O-line fell apart, or because Carr got hurt, or because of all the injuries to Olave, Shaheed. So I'm going to do a deeper dive on that. I think on its face, I'm not like super moved by the decision if it is him. I'm not really sure who would move me, to be fair. But I do like the fact that he just got play calling experience with multiple stops, multiple different quarterbacks. I think that's going to be really important, as we've discussed. I just think Grubb was kind of in over his head is strong, but for lack of a better term, he kind of was, and it showed up this year. I don't think an experienced guy should have the same issues Grubb had. He could have different ones, but if he shouldn't have the same issues Grubb had in year one.
Because you talked about that in one of your last pieces at The Athletic, just talking about the offseason, outlook on the team, that if one of your things that should be a requirement for an offensive coordinator is play calling duties, like who has had experience calling plays at the NFL level.
Yeah, I think that's really important for what they want to be. It's not like every guy who's done it, who gets hired this offseason has to have play calling experience for other teams. I think it's different, everywhere. I think like the Raiders guy, whoever the Raiders hire, if that's some up and coming dude or whatever, I think that's fine. I think that's the same thing for the Bears, although they may have a bit more urgent needs because of where they feel their rosters at. But in these teams that are kind of like on this rebuilding path, I feel like can have the patience needed to watch a guy grow. The Seahawks are trying to win like today. Like they are not happy about the fact that they are probably just like me booking flights to Cancun. That is not a good place for them to be in. And to avoid that, I think you really got to have someone who's seen a lot more, maybe not seen it all, but just seen a lot more, seen that defensive coordinator, seen that front style, seen that blitz scheme, knows how to prepare this, knows how to teach this concept. Maybe a good red zone designer would be my like really, really, really preferred thing. That might be at the top of the list. If I was interviewing some of these candidates, like how can you fix our red zone stuff? So I think just having someone who's done it before, preferably at multiple different stops, I think would be really, really helpful. So that part of it would move me if it was Klint.
Any just looking at the tree, obviously Gary Kubiak is a longtime, quarterback in the league, a longtime play caller, kind of comes from that, the old kind of West Coast system, and it fits in with the Shanahans. So you start to see the not only the older Shanahan, which why am I blanking on Kyle Shanahan's dad, Mike Shanahan, Shanahan to Kyle to the Kubiak influence. So, you see some of that. So, we've wondered, which direction Macdonald would want to go. And so it appears if this indeed is the hire of Klint Kubiak, he's kind of going in that direction of that Shanahan West Coast tree.
Yeah, it's what it looks like. It's interesting because that's necessary. Everything is cyclical, and this is a copycat league. So when something gets hot, everyone hires someone to do it. And there was a time when that was the hot thing. I feel like when Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan got in, you saw a lot more teams doing that under center, get to the perimeter run game. And it's fewer teams doing that now. It feels like there's a lot more teams trying to go between the tackles with their run game, shotgun stuff, trying to take advantage of the too high looks, because when you're in too high as a defense, well, now you got light bodies up front. I'm just going to run it right at you up the guards. You're seeing guards get paid. You're seeing like power backs who can just like stay between the tackles, have a lot of impact on their offenses. The Saquon, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs in Green Bay. And you're seeing some of the teams do what Klint and those guys were doing in New Orleans. The Texans try to do something similar. The Falcons, their run scheme, they have a McVay disciple. At least they had. Zach Robinson, I think is his name. He was running the same thing with Cousins, kind of that stretch plays, things like that, play action off of it. So there are teams still doing it, but it feels like the new hotness, to quote Men in Black 2, is kind of the shotgunish power.
Yeah.
Whether it's shotgun or not, just like running power football to take advantage of the fact that the numbers favor just running it up the gut now because of this too high world we're living in.
Well, the first two games, you mentioned it, they were great in those first two games, and then they collapsed right after that. I'd have to go back and look what led to them collapsing. I think it was like
I can tell you what happened.
Was it a 6-game losing streak right after that? They just start playing good teams? Because the first two games were the Panthers and the Cowboys.
Yeah, and I think that was part of it. But the other part was, I think their third or fourth game was against the Eagles and Vic Fangio. And
yeah,
they beat the snot out of them offensively. I forget the score, but the Saints didn't score much.
It was 15-12. It was at least a close game.
Yeah. So the Saints offensive came crashing down to earth. And they basically, to oversimplify it, they basically used the blueprint that Belichick used in the Super Bowl against the Rams in 2018 with the fronts, basically saying, here's a bunch of guys on the edges. Now you can't get outside of us. Do something else. And that scheme has struggled to adjust to that. I mean, McVay's basically given up on it. Now he's changed his whole scheme because teams figured out, oh, you're trying to hit the perimeter? Well, here's a bear front, buddy. Here's a 6x1 front. Figure it out, and so it's a very stoppable schematic thing if you have a really good coach. So I say all that to say, I don't actually think Mike Macdonald will hire Klint with that in mind. Like, oh, hey, yeah, let's go under center and perimeter runs, play action off of it. I think you would just want him more to do a better job probably of what Grubb was trying to do. Because there are teams doing that as well, very similar offenses, but doing it better. I think the Bengals would be the primary example of that for 2024.
Yeah, Carr ended up playing the first 5 games, and he got knocked out in that game. He didn't play in the Tampa Bay game or the Denver game. Or, I mean, he may have played, but, I mean, I'm just trying to think of, like, when he got – because, remember, Carr was dealing with injuries, all that year. Yeah, Spencer Rattler ended up starting that Buccaneers game and played 3 straight games.
Yeah, they fell apart. Their center got hurt, I think. A couple other O-line injuries.
Right.
Olave got hurt. Shaheed ended up ending on IR. Like, it fell apart for sure. So it wasn't just that, it's not like Kubiak forgot how to call plays, but I think it was more so. I think more so when I look at that hire, I see the experience and the background is something Mike would be chasing versus like, let's run this particular scheme, because I don't even think necessarily that scheme would match well with Seattle's personnel. And I think Mike would recognize that too.
Yeah, and I think we discussed this last week, and I've discussed it with others. I would just say to Mike Macdonald, like, look in the mirror. What gives you problems? Like, what's the offense that you struggle with? And he would go, okay, that one. Because it reminded me of, there was a little note. I'll just segue here to college football for a second. Jimmy Rogers, when Jimmy Rogers, the new Washington State coach, when he hired an offensive coordinator at South Dakota State, the Danny Freund gentleman who's now the offensive coordinator at Washington State, when he hired him at South Dakota State, going into that hiring process, Freund was at North Dakota, and the reason he hired him at South Dakota State was because that was the one offense that gave his defense the most issues. So he's like, well, let's just bring him on board. And then now he's brought him to Washington State. So when I relaying that story, that's what I thought about with Macdonald. Why not just hire the scheme that gives you problems? Or at least from that tree of it.
That's what Pete, this is another oversimplification, but that was Pete's kind of thinking with hiring Shane Waldron. From the Rams tree, it was like, McVay he's kicking our ass pretty routinely here. How do we stop this guy? And, Ken Norton actually came up with some decent answers, I thought, for the scheme. But then, at least on Pete's side, he was like, you know what? I'm just going to hire somebody from that tree. Let's figure it out. And I think by the time that would have been the answer, teams had started to shift there. I think Belichick's blueprint in that Super Bowl really, like I said, copycat league, that kind of showed teams how you can maneuver around that schematically, that kind of play action perimeter stuff. It's not like it's the only way to stop it, but it is very stoppable. So yeah, I think the main thing for Mike would be like, how would you, every question should start with this. Every interview, he should come in and be like, hey, how would you maximize from Mike Macdonald? How are you going to maximize the talent we have? Not this perfect world where let's assume we make no changes to our roster. Just take the guys we have now. What are you going to do? And I would work everything in the interview backwards from that question. I would want
Kubiak, whoever it is, to come in there, get on the whiteboard like old Gruden used to do, right? When he did that, the old quarterback series. And I would just say, I want you to draw me red zone plays right now. And how do we get 14 the ball in the red zone? Just tell me how you're going to get him open. And then that would be my first thing personally. And then I would go like, all right, how do we unlock Ken Walker in the run game? How do we get that better? How do we get Ken Walker from his rookie season? How do we take more advantage of him? It's a great point because, I mean, they do have the personnel from the skill position players, Mike, that they're good there. We're going to get into trades and money and cap and all that kind of stuff. But just looking at the personnel they have, it's good.
Yeah, I think the red zone, like I mentioned earlier, I'm with you. We can really just start there. Let's start with third down and red zone. How can ask the guy you're interviewing? Let's go. Call it right now. We're in the red zone. First and 10, first and goal at the 9. This is the coordinator we're playing. So I'll give you some fronts and some stuff. Generally, like this is the front they're showing us. This is the shell. Go. We need 7 right here. We're not selling for 3. Go. How are you going to get it done? I don't care if it's getting DK the ball, Noah, Jax, whoever, Tyler. Just like, how are we going to get 7? Go. And we work backwards from there, because that could answer the question of how do you get Ken more involved. That could answer the DK. We're just starting with that blanket idea of we need to score first and goal from the 9. How are we going to score? Go. I feel like the most telling. It's the most broad question to get you the most answers from that candidate.
Mike, we are in the time of off season and we drum up storylines. And DK is going to be the biggest storyline this offseason, probably besides, number one was going to be the offensive coordinator search, and we kind of it seems like that's winding down. Number two is going to be Geno Smith and the contract. What are they going to do with him? And then DK, the future of DK. Been a lot of talk. Do they trade him? What kind of money are they going to give him? How much do they invest in the wide receiver position? Where are we at with DK Metcalf? Do you think there is a possibility they would trade him, or is the likely scenario that they ended up working out a deal, some type of extension here this offseason?
Yeah, I think anybody's at chance of getting punted on. I think John's pretty much shown that. He'll just let guys walk, whether they're franchise icons, or whether they're a young guy in their prime who's playing well, like a Shaquille Griffin, or he'll trade a guy. Whether they're a young guy in their prime at a premium position like Frank Clark. Traded Max Unger when he was playing really well too. So he'll get rid of anybody. So I never want to say never in that regard, particularly if it comes down to money, like it did with Frank. With Frank Clark, I think is really informative situation. John basically was like, I'm not giving you the DeMarcus Lawrence contract. I will go collect the assets, even though you're a young guy. Just had, I think, 13 and a half sacks that year on a defense that went to the playoffs. He was killing it, premium position, young player, homegrown guy. And John said, see ya, and that's fine. You can do that. I think that's a really good example when getting into the DK thing, is because when you talk about getting rid of any premium player, you're like, oh, we're going to save money and get assets. Right. Great. That's fine. You can never argue with the process of that, particularly with a non-quarterback. But let's talk about the trust level, I think, of reallocating those assets properly to immediately upgrade the team. And that's where I think the DK discussion should be framed. It's not just, okay, should they trade DK? They'll maybe get a late first round. Send them to the Patriots. You get pick 35, and you save a bunch of money. Of course, that sounds fine, right? It's a hard salary cap league. But the same thing happened with Frank. They got, I think, a first round pick, I believe, saved a bunch of cash, and didn't reallocate those funds properly, and the defense got worse, like immediately worse, and they still don't have a edge rusher as good as Frank was. That was 7 years ago now. And I think when I look at the DK situation, it's not about how much money he's going to make on the extension.
Because you're not going to really save money though if you move him.
I think you save like 10 mil or something like that.
You save 10, but his debt again, I'm not a capologist, okay? I just read what others write. But his dead money, right, is $21 million. So you don't really save much, do you?
Well, you do, but I think the net savings is important there, because let's say you save $11 million. Say you trade DK, you send him to the Patriots. They give you their second round pick, which is pretty high, which is like why I keep using them, because I think it's going to be in the 30s because they have a very high first round pick. So let's say you do that and you save 11 mil. Then you got to talk about net savings, because we still need to pay other people, right? So it's like we're probably going to sign a receiver. So even if you sign, let's say you just go grab a random guy for 2 mil, really only netted $9 million in savings because we went and got somebody. It doesn't matter who the somebody is in this case. Okay. And we get the pick. And then we save money down the line because we're clearing DK from our 2026 books or whatever. Like the math on it all is fine, but it's all about the reallocation of those resources. It sounds great. Trade Frank Clark. Don't got to pay him $100 million. You get an extra first round pick. Great. Now we need to make sure our defense is good and we have an edge rusher. You know what they did in that draft after they traded Frank Puck? They drafted LJ Collier with that. You know what they did after that when they realized LJ wasn't the guy, and when he hurt his ankle in training camp? They traded for the Jadeveon Clowney. You know what they did after that? Then they had to go trade for Carlos Dunlap. It was like, oh, our pass rush still isn't good at the time. This is in 2020 now. We're going to trade for Jamal Adams.
So it's a lack of trust that the people in charge, John Schneider, could actually properly reallocate that money to make the team better.
Immediately. I think the immediate part is important, because over time, maybe they could. But when you make moves like that with a team like where the Seahawks are now, you're not just like, oh, let's go get some young receiver that we got to develop and spend the extra $7 million on a guard and maybe be a 10-win team again next year. No, they're trying to, like I said, they're trying to win. So you're telling me I got to trust these cats to trade DK and reallocate those resources to getting the team better right now? I just have a hard time seeing that. It's hard to do it. Like, Puck, you look at the teams that have punted on good, let's just look at receivers. They've had a hard time getting immediately better on offense. You know, whether you're talking about the Chiefs getting rid of Tyreek, the Bills getting rid of Stephon just recently, the Packers getting rid of Devontae. There's been a few other examples. Like, yeah, some of these teams have been okay, but did they get immediately better on offense? Did they reallocate those resources properly? You know what the Packers did when they got rid of Devontae? I think they used both those picks on defenders from Georgia.
But
Their
what did they
defense
do?
still isn't great.
What did the Chiefs do, though? I mean, because the Chiefs since then have won another Super Bowl. Did they not reallocate that money to their offensive line?
What they did, they did a few different things with the money. But their offense ended up still being fine because they had an all-pro tight end. But they definitely have to dramatically change their offense after
and then
that.
arguably the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yes. And but you know what, Puck? You know what they still ended up needing to do is dump more resources into receivers. You know, like they were still, still had to make a midseason trade. Still had to go take Xavier Worthy most recently. You know, they probably still going to take a receiver again or try to pay for one of this offseason. It's not the Chiefs aren't the cleanest example, but in general, I feel like you could throw the Titans in there too when they got rid of AJ.
They got rid of AJ Brown. I wonder though, are teams starting, like if you've got a really elite quarterback, do you look at wide receivers? I brought this up earlier this week, like a money ball. Like we'll draft a guy and we can just plug in these different guys to play wide receiver because we have a really elite quarterback. Thus, we don't got to pay a ton of money to the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I think there's a world where that sounds great. I think the Vikings will tell you, they punted on Stephon Diggs, got a first-round pick, took Justin Jefferson. Great. They got a better player for cheaper immediately. Sometimes you can do that. But then sometimes you're the Titans. Got rid of AJ, didn't want to pay him $100 million, drafted Treylon Burks, got immediately worse right away. Now everyone involved in that decision is now fired. So it can go either way. I think it's really about, for me, do I trust the people to reallocate the resources? I do think that's the way to frame it because we've seen it. We've seen this regime, front office specifically, try to replace premium talent. And it has generally gone poorly, whether you're talking about replacing the Legion of Boom or where you're talking about replacing pass rushers, where you're talking about replacing Russell Okung at tackle. It's gone poorly in the immediate searches, which is why, go look at most of John's big trades in the last, let's say 8 years. Most of them are to cover up for not immediately drafting or signing in free agency players to replace the good ones he already had. That's where most of those trades are born out of. Some of them are great trades like Quandre, but it's because you didn't hit on Marquise Blair that you needed Quandre, because you didn't hit on Tedrick that you needed Quandre. So, that's where I get on the DK thing. I'm like, of course it makes sense to go reallocate the resources. Yeah, great. Do I trust you to do it though? Do I trust you to or would I rather you just keep the good player you have and just use him better? Which one's easier?
Yeah. It's all great points for sure. Hey, the last conversation or the last topic I had with Garafolo, I'm interested to get your opinion on it. And I brought up the example, it's the Rooney Rule, and brought up the example of Leslie Frazier's going to interview for the Cowboys this week. And Leslie Frazier's in his 60s. I don't know how many people really think Leslie Frazier is a true candidate for the Cowboys job. And I think that it's fair to sit back and be skeptical of the rule and go, are the Cowboys just interviewing Leslie Frazier because they need to fulfill the Rooney Rule and interview a minority candidate? I don't know if we talked about it last week or a few weeks ago, or when Thomas Brown was brought up. Thomas Brown interviewed for the Seahawks OC job, who was the offensive coordinator. He was the interim coach for the Bears. And I think you look on the surface, you go, well, the Bears offense was terrible. Just what was good about the Bears offense? Nothing. You saw them up close and personal. It's such a big topic, Mike, but the execution of the rule behind it, you understand it and acknowledge it, and it's a good rule. Are the teams, is the league executing the rule properly? So, because when I see Leslie Frazier, I go, my first reaction is Leslie Frazier is not going to get the job. He's not even going to sniff the job for the Cowboys. Now, maybe I'm wrong. But I think of Leslie Frazier because of what I said to Garafolo. Were you covering the Seahawks back when they hired Pete Carroll? No, you weren't covering him, right? No.
No,
I forget how young you are.
Yeah, I graduated high school the year they hired Pete.
Okay, never mind. So I don't know if you remember this story. When they hired him, when Jim Mora was given his end of the year press conference, and looking forward to next year and all that, the Seahawks brass was in LA, essentially hiring Pete Carroll They had already fired Jim Moore. He just didn't know it yet, and they were going to hire Pete Carroll. Well, then they do it, and like 2 weeks later, I can't remember the exact time frame, they bring in Leslie Frazier to do an interview. And then it comes out afterwards that the timeline, we're like, well, wait a minute, was that really even an interview, or are you just doing it to comply a rule? What's the perfect solution? How do you make it better?
Yeah,
if there's any way to make it better.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I mean, because you think of why the Rooney Rule exists in the first place. I believe it was because the NFL is about to get sued, and they were like, "All right, well, we gotta change something here. No one likes when they bring out the briefcases, and suits, and like, all right, we're taking you to court." And I think that's how the Rooney Rule was born. And it's the idea. Really, you're talking about changing people's hearts, essentially. And that's just hard to do in general, as we've just seen in America for years. But it's just really hard to do when you talk about specifically NFL owners and telling them who they should act, who they have to consider to run their business, right? That's just tough, because that's really what it is. It's telling them, hey man, make sure you consider some black people for the gig. And it's like, well, what if I don't want to? I bought this thing. I paid billions of dollars for this thing. I'm gonna hire who I want. And the idea of you can hire who you want, I think, is something that's a fair rebuttal, honestly. Like, let's say Robert Kraft, right? It's like, I fired Gerard Mayo because I want to hire Mike Vrabel. Great. That is well within Robert Kraft's right. Like, why, if you think about it, if I'm Robert Kraft, why are you forcing me to interview someone else? It's my company. It's my business. I know who I want to hire, and that's what I'm going to do. I have that right as a business owner, like pulling out the lawyers to sue me to make sure I interview Byron Leftwich, before I do it. I feel like that ultimately can do a disservice to those minority candidates, as you're talking about with Leslie, because it's who are we to tell somebody like, hey man, make sure you consider some other folks. Like, for what? I think Garafolo mentioned the Raiders example. They were like, we want to hire John Gruden. Okay, cool. I run the Raiders. I own the Raiders. I want to hire John Gruden. Who are you to tell me I have to consider somebody else? So I think the application of it is always going to be clunky, because what we're trying to do, I guess, is not totally like sensible. Like, how can you force me? It's like somebody forcing you to hire someone to come on your show every week. It's like, why? It's the daily puck drop. I'm Puck. I don't want somebody else on here. How are you going to make me consider somebody else? What if I just don't want to?
I think the idea behind it is, can we get candidates in front of particular owners who would never consider it, right? Because of the years and years of, if somebody, Mike, if somebody that looked like you walks into a room and somebody like me is in the hiring process, they would take one look and go, I'm out. Just, the stereotype, right? Just the immediate, no, I'm good. And because we can see things, we don't get to know someone right away. We don't go through the interview process. And if I have we all stereotype. Everybody does when you meet somebody for the first time. You immediately do it. It's just a human trait. So I get the idea behind it and support the idea behind it. But I think the execution of it, and you bring up great points. I mean, I think if you own a business, they own the business. It's who they want to hire. And most of these owners, if they decide, hey, I'm going to make a move with a coach, like it's Jody Allen, right? Or maybe that's a poor example. It's Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones, Mike McCarthy's going to no longer be my coach. I'm sure Jerry Jones has got 10 people on a list that he's kept who he wants to give the job to, or at least be interested in giving the job to. So, but I guess the idea of it is to what Garafolo said. It's like the Tomlin situation. Well, we didn't think we'd hire Mike Tomlin, but once he got in the interview, we're like, okay, maybe it opens up our eyes to a different candidate we didn't think we would give time to. So,
the idea behind it is trying to force people to be open-minded. Really. Yeah, just to be more open-minded. But I also think, like, in football, this is a little bit hyperbolic, but I really think that's kind of a joke. Because, like, if you think about it, football, we look at hiring a head coach. We really only consider people who have done two things: either coached offense, been an offensive coordinator, or a defensive coordinator. That's like the tiniest pipeline in the world. Right. If you really think about it.
No special teams coach other than like Harbaugh's like the only one.
Yeah. Joe Judge, was a special teams guy who got hired. That was awful. But like in general, like it's such a small pool that we are pulling from anyway. And that's just the norm, is to pull from such a small pool. We don't consider any women for coaching. So you're cutting off like half the population right there. Just the people. You're just like, oh yeah, we'll not consider any women. So we're already throwing that right out the boat. We're half the people right here in America that love football. We're just not going to consider. So I feel like we're already dealing from this small pipeline because the NFL will tell you that's the issue too. It's like we got to let the owners know that there's these other coaches out here. Man, they know. They know. There was a bunch of owners fawning over hiring Josh McCown. He had never coached anything more than middle school girls flag or something like that. And like, let's interview Josh McCown. I was like, well, how'd they find him?
Hey, but how is their red zone offense in the flag football middle school?
Yeah, you can't. I don't think you can organically force someone to be more open-minded. I think at a grand scale, maybe an individual, like one person, yes. But I don't think at a mass level, mass being the NFL owner level, like I just don't think you can. I think if you really want to do it, if you're the NFL, is you got to put some real punitive like penalties on, not following. Like, hey, if we figure out your interview was a sham, here's your first round pick is gone, or something like that, or something that these guys really care about, some competitive disadvantage. I think that's the real way to do it. I don't think it can be rewarding for doing it right, like we kind of do with like, oh, you lost your black coach, here's 2 third-round picks. I think that's a weird
right.
They should get rid of that. But I think a penalty would be more of the way to do it. Like, hey, you hired Gruden, you skirted the rule, or you got these sham interviews. Give us your first-round pick. It's ours now. Something like that, I think would lead to some maybe some better execution. But I still think the spirit of it would be a bunch of sham interviews, like I think we just saw in New England.
One couple more things and then we'll wrap up, and I'll just kind of go in one of the pieces that you wrote. I mean, you've got 2 good pieces, one kind of on John Schneider, and then the other one, the Seahawks, a lot of work to do there in the offseason. You make a case, obviously, and I think we all support it, to bring back Ernest Jones, some cap decisions, and they need to make some decisions on clearing some money. Who do you think, when they look at it, and they can restructure deals, but who is a cap casualty in your mind? Is there someone or some people that you think that will no longer be on this team next season to clear up some cap space?
Yeah, I think Tyler's number is hard to carry. I think it's in the 30s. I think you save a lot of money there. Draymond's number, I think, is untenable. I guess in the 20s, 20 millions. I'm saying. I think Chenna's number is probably going to have to come down. You don't think he's a guy like, oh, we can just move on from, because you want to see what you got there because he's been so injured. And kind of freak injuries too. It's not like some of the chronic stuff like we've seen with some other guys who would be a concern. His number's 20 plus. You probably want to restructure and bring that down. I think George Fant could be in danger there if Abe's okay and they like what they got with Mike Jarrell. And they're like, oh, we have backup tackles and we can draft one, so we'll be fine. I think DK's number has to come down. Geno's number has to come down. Noah's number, I go back and forth on because it's not crazy. I think it's like 13 million or something like that. That you could either that you save or that his number is. I don't have it in front of me, but he's one that's kind of interesting.
You would save 8.9.
Yeah, you save 8. I think the number's 13. So yeah, that's a tricky one. I think the ones I'd feel most confident about probably like, hey, there's no way you're back on that number is Roy Robertson Harris, Rayshon Jenkins, Tyler, Draymond. Those are the ones I feel most confident about. Maybe Noah as well. And depending on George Fant's injury situation, I would throw him in there as well. Because they don't have a lot of money, Puck. They're in the red pretty deep, and they have a lot of moves I think they need to make. And it isn't just as simple as restructuring some guys. Like they're gonna have to make some hard decisions. But I think really simple, Tyler, Draymond, George, that might save you 30 mil right there. Throwing Rayshon and Roy, I think we might be over like 40 mil in savings just on like 5 guys.
There he is. Go check out all his work at The Athletic. Michael-Shawn Dugar joins us every single week talking Seahawks football. Also, go give a listen to the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast with our guy Christopher Kidd. At the Vision for the Future is the latest podcast where you, for those two, Seahawks Man-to-Man, where you can find everywhere and anywhere on all your podcast platforms. All right, we'll be staying tuned all day long to see if they make that announcement for Klint Kubiak, perhaps being the new offensive coordinator for the Seahawks. Mike, appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
I appreciate it, man. Go Cougs.
Yeah, go Cougs. There he is. Michael-Shawn Dugar, every single week with us. And again, that will be a podcast later up on YouTube when you're there. Again, like and subscribe. Please like me, please. Subscribe to the channel. We'll put up Mike's episode up there every single week. For the audio, folks, everything will be up on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, and of course pucksports.com. We'll put everything up there for you. All right, let's wrap up the show today. Newsy show with Mike Garafolo and also Michael-Shawn Dugar. And if you're just tuning in late, and we'll have the clips up later, but Mike Garafolo reporting that Klint Kubiak getting a second interview today with the Seahawks, taking place in Seattle. And according to Garafolo and Ian Rappaport, that Kubiak, the 37-year-old offensive coordinator this past season for the Saints, is in the driver's seat for the job. So I would expect something to come out later today or even tomorrow that Kubiak is the new offensive coordinator there with your Seattle Seahawks and Mike Macdonald. So stay tuned for that. If you're joining us late, well, again, we'll have Garafolo up later as well on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and pucksports.com. All right, hey, What the Puck, brought to you by Restoration One in North Seattle. It is your restoration company that lets you avoid the stress of water, fire, and mold damage with their property restoration services. Locally owned and operated. Make them your first call when damages affect your residential or commercial property. 206-817-8917. Visit them online at restoration1.com, the North Seattle franchise. All right, we haven't talked a lot about this. We got into a little bit with Garafolo. This Eagles fan and Packers drama that happened this past weekend and ended up, if you haven't seen the video, Eagles fan is berating a Packers fan, a woman, and called her, the most heinous thing you can ever call a woman, the C word. And it's all caught on video because it's being recorded by another Packers fan who I believe is the husband or boyfriend of the woman, and captures all of it. And it went viral, and it's despicable, and they ended up identifying the man, who's Ryan Caldwell, the Eagles fan, and no one is going to sit there and support what he said to this woman. Never should be said. No fan should ever go to a game and have to endure this. And I don't think it's just a Philadelphia problem. I think this happens in other markets all the time. I've seen it not to this degree, but I've seen people get agitated and in people's faces at Seahawks games, and it's Seahawks fans to other opposing fans. So I don't want Seahawks fans to act like this stuff doesn't ever happen in Seattle, because I've seen it. I remember walking through. Does everyone remember Tailgaters Heaven that we used to have before they knocked down the viaduct and all that? Do you remember that? I remember 49er fans used to walk through there. And the stuff that was being said to them, I mean, vile. Now, I've never seen personally anything like this, what transpired this last weekend. But it's it's just wrong what happened. He was outed on social media. Social media found out who he was. He ends up losing his job. All of it. He's come out since then and has apologized, taken ownership for what he did. For the most part, I read it last night. I don't think he blamed anything, didn't blame anyone other than just blaming himself. So he took ownership of it. Again, I'm not saying what he did was right. I guess it's wrong on both sides. What I'm struggling with is more details comes out about the Packers fan who actually recorded him. And his name is Alex Bissara. And he's like he's a content guy on YouTube. He's a Packers fan. But he grew up in Philadelphia. He's a Packers fan. And before he went to the game in Philadelphia, apparently he went on social media and started a GoFundMe page. This is like Seahawk back in the day, going back to the Super Bowl. Started a GoFundMe page to go to Philadelphia for the playoff game. He says, hey, my name is Alex, and you guys know me on YouTube. I go as Bass, and I want to go to the game, looking to raise $600 to go to the game. Apparently he got enough money to go. He went there. He's a social media guy. He's a content guy anyways. And he goes to the game. And then as someone is berating his wife, calling her what he called her. He's just recording the whole thing and then telling, hey, man, you can't call her that. Now, I don't know what other people would do, and I'm not saying violence is the best thing in the world, but if that is happening to me at a game and someone's saying that to my wife, I'm not recording the interview. I'm not recording it. Like, and I'm not a violent person, but like there's a line, and that's a line. Now, whether the first step is, hey, to go grab somebody, which is the mature thing to do, go grab somebody, security. Hey, this guy is saying this stuff to my wife. Like, he's got to leave. That's what you should do, right? The second thing is, if that doesn't stop it, then you stop it. And again, I know I'm advocating violence, but there is a line at some point as a person who's saying that to a loved one, you've got to step up. And he didn't. He just sat there and allowed it to happen. So that would lead me to believe he wanted this whole thing to happen so he could capture it on video and then put it out there for everyone, which then that is disgusting and wrong. And then I gotta believe if he's doing that, then she's complicit with it and allowing it. At least I'm open to that idea. Is she complicit to this, allowing this to happen? So if that's the case, then that's wrong. And then the other people that are just standing by watching it and listening to it, other Eagles fans, what are you doing? Just come on. Step up. When did we become just such an ugly society where we just allow that to happen? And just to have someone, if that's my buddy, I'm like, dude, shut up. Stop it. It's not funny. Yeah, I don't think there are a lot of wrongs in all of this. First and foremost, the Eagles fan is wrong. He never did what he did. No one forced him to say those things. But this Packers fan, this guy is not innocent. And this guy still, quote, has blood on his hands. Because I think there was, as more I read about this story, I think there was an intent from this social media content gatherer with Green Bay. I think there was an intent to get something like this to happen so he could then post it. I think, which is disgusting in its own self. All right, that's it. That's Hey What the Puck, brought to you by Restoration One in North Seattle. Restoration Company lets you avoid the stress of water, fire, and mold damage with their property restoration services. Give them a call, 206-817-8917. Visit them online at restoration1.com, the North Seattle franchise. That's another edition of the Daily Puck Drop in the books. Appreciate you watching and listening. Again, full episode will be up on YouTube. Also, we'll separate the interviews on YouTube of Michael-Shawn Dugar and Mike Garafolo. And then for the audio platforms on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen, we'll just post the whole Daily Puck Drop up there all at once. When you go to pucksports.com as well, please sign up, be a Pucks Posse member. $5 a month, that's it. You get all the free content plus all the VIP extra bonus shows that we do as well. Latest shows is the Dynamic Duos. I sat down, hour and 15-minute conversation with Dave Grosby, Mike Gastineau, Gros and Gas. Give it a listen. It's worth the $5. Also, longtime O'Day football coach Monty Kohler just wrapped up another state title for O'Day. 40-plus years of coaching. Talking about his tying the record of the wins record held by Sid Otten from Tumwater. And Monty Kohler is just a great advocate for high school sports and sports in general. Those are all available to Pucks Posse members. Again, just $5 a month. And you get a discount if you sign up for a year. Go to pucksports.com. The link at the top of the page will take you right there. All right, we'll talk to you on a Friday show, which includes Jim Moore coming back. Lofa, we'll talk a little Seahawks. And Chris Egan from King 5 has got a fantastic story on Elaine Smith, who was a longtime scoreboard operator for Rogers High School. Go watch that video. It's a feel-good story. Everyone needs a feel-good story. Go watch Chris Egan's piece on Elaine Smith, feel-good story, up at king5.com. We'll talk to you tomorrow. As always, promise to be better.
No shoes, no dice.
Would anybody like to smoke some pot?
Yeah.
I was born to love you. I was born to lick your face. I was born to rub you. But you were born to rub me first.
What do you need my address for?
We'd like to send out a mailer.
Mother of mercy, I don't speak Japanese!